Thank
Now
you.
we call up John Willumsen, and Jason Martiesian's not here. Michael Araujo.
Yes.
Oh, Jason, come on up. Okay. Didn't see you back there. Okay, Representative?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I'll do my best to be short and brief with you all. The legislation before you seeks to sanctuary mechanism for a business to incorporate as a workers' cooperative. A workers' cooperative is an enterprise that is jointly owned by the individuals who do the work of the business. They are both the owners and operators, with their share of ownership directly tied to the amount of work they put in. Cooperatives are a business structure that is growing in popularity and is seen across a range of industries, from farming to tech startups to restaurants and bars. Across the country, workers' cooperatives are generating over $400 million in annual revenues, with greatest part of this economic growth going to states that have cooperative status like the one before you. The states include Massachusetts, which passed its cooperative form law in 1983, and Connecticut, which did so in 1997. Cooperatives are popular quite simply because they create good jobs, power the local economy, and support local entrepreneurship. Because the owners are also the operators and worker at the business, profits stay in state and flow to other local businesses. Cooperatives have also proven resistant to economic downturns and help soften the job loss blow to the state during bad times. This legislation would allow Rhode Island to grow this important sector of our economy. At present, there are already businesses operating as cooperatives in our state and others that want to do so. Without a specified statutory cooperative form, however, they're struck operating on a mix of contracts, handshakes, and mutual understandings. This creates risk, uncertainty, and added burden on these businesses. This legislation corrects that without creating any new rights or remedies for these businesses, simply entitling them to the same kind of legal framework that the Business Cooperative Action Act and the Nonprofit Cooperative Act provide other corporations. Cooperatives are an important piece of state's economy in the 21st century. This legislation brings us in line with Massachusetts and Connecticut and makes us more attractive to people who want to start this kind of business, creating good jobs and meaningful business ownership opportunities for Rhode Islanders. We do have the support of the Secretary of State's office as well as Secretary Treasurer. We have had conversations with Lauren Wyatt from the Providence Chambers of Rhode Island. They are not in opposition. She is in broad support in going back to her board of directors to follow up. I will take any questions. I do have John, who is here from the Center of Justice, who could elaborate or answer any questions too.
Why don't we have John tell us a little bit more about this bill?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot that one could say about this bill. There's a lot of studies around the economic advantages around workers' cooperatives, the jobs they create, their resiliency. I think it's most important to highlight that, as Representative Maldonado said, there are many worker cooperatives already operating in the state, many more businesses that are interested in this flourishing type of corporate entity. And the benefits of expanding this sector really flow to throughout the state's economy to other businesses. Money is being kept in the hands of Rhode Islanders and being spent on other Rhode Island businesses. There exists a bit of a barrier right now in that there's no statutory form for these businesses. There's no equivalent to the Business Corporations Act or the Nonprofits Corporations Act. This would tie the statutory framework for workers' cooperatives into the Business Corporations Act, and where there are gaps or areas that the current Business Corporation statute is not appropriate for workers' cooperatives, it fills those gaps. And I would note that it's really a way to spur what is a flourishing sector of our economy, has a lot of interest in, and it offers a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship for folks who might not otherwise have access to that. And it does so at no cost to anybody. So I'm going to leave it there out of deference to the time, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Jason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I will be brief and not be redundant. I did drop a letter from the Secretary in support of this legislation. And we do, as Representative Maldonado mentioned, and we thank her for sponsoring this legislation, support the bill. I think, as she mentioned, it does create a unique corporate structure for workers' cooperatives, which, as you heard, are employee-owned businesses, and just a new exciting opportunity to develop businesses and grow jobs in Rhode Island. For those reasons, we support the legislation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions to the committee? Representative Chippendale.
Quickly, and perhaps, Jason, you'd be the best to answer this. Will this, if it were adopted, will this create a different tax structure for those organizations or those types of organizations? And if so, is it something that can be handled under the current tax division, the way it's set up right now?
Not that I'm aware. John may know. Not that I'm aware of. And again, I think there is, as the representative said, there are a number of businesses operating similar to workers' cooperatives, but they're registered as maybe LLCs and just have bylaws that denote them as a cooperatives where they're employee owned. So I don't think it would impact tax status. But if John doesn't know the answer, I'm happy to follow up.
We don't believe that it does impact tax status. The goal of the legislation is to put workers' cooperatives in the same position as other corporations in the state. We have had experts from Massachusetts who operate workers' cooperatives under substantially similar legislation go over ours. They suggest there's no change in tax structure. I'm happy to provide additional information specifically on that point, but I'm very comfortable saying that no, it does not create.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I mean, does anyone have any experience with the downside of this? Like, in other words, the practical aspect of this? Like, just to throw out there, a business can have a loss too, and you've got people who are not necessarily corporately savvy. Corporations are not easy to run and maintain all the corporate formalities all the time. And when problems happen, what's the downside of people who are not skilled in running a corporation trying to do something like this?
I think, Mr. Chairman, there's two answers to that. One is we have not seen any instances of people sort of saying, I duped myself by doing this, and I would have been better off just working for someone. In fact, if they were working for an employer who suffered those losses, likely they would be at risk of losing their job, which might be an even more extreme impact than going through a couple of down years. But the other point I would add is this legislation would actually help mitigate any potential problem in that area by really making it clear what folks are getting themselves into when they form a corporation.
Any other questions of the committee? Thank you very much. Let's go to Michael Araujo. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, Michael Araujo. Raul Figueroa. Wyatt. Ben Choiniere. Okay, Mr. Araujo.
There we go. So I'm the Executive Director of Rhode Island Jobs with Justice, and we have been working with Fuerza laboral and the Center for Justice in drafting this with the bill's sponsor. Oftentimes we come before this committee or other committees that are like this in the House with punitive legislation or looking for a way to ensure workers to get lost wages or other protections. This was the first piece of legislation that we saw that had the opportunity to not only build strength inside our communities that we deal with, but also provide a new method for employment that was stable and shared. Statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics offer that 95% of new businesses actually fail. However, only 45% of cooperatives fail. There tends to be a mitigated effect by having a number of people participating in the process. They tend to make decisions more carefully, a little bit slower, but with a little bit greater care. And because of that, cooperatives tend to be a far more stable business model for a lot of people. The other part is that our population that we deal with in our constituency with Rhode Island Jobs with Justice are often low-wage immigrant workers. The cooperative model is one that's very, very familiar in the immigrant community. It's nearly universal. And because of that, that corporate structure has a more intuitive nature to it than other corporate structure. This law provides, or this bill potentially provides, an easier path to maximize microlending or people who don't have access to large-scale loans, business loans, to actually pool capital and start new business and stabilize employment. The other part is that because cooperatives are so close to their business source as employee owners, they know what the change in the market is almost immediately and are allowed to react in a way that's much faster than traditional business. That's why we're kind of supporting it. We see this as both a model that can change in a kind of innovative path. And inside the Coalition of Rhode Island Jobs with Justice, we contain many different labor unions, some of which are building trades who see this as a future path of organizing. So I'm urging this committee to pass this very, very worthy bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Raul Figueroa. I'm an organizer at a workers' center in Central Falls called Fuerza laboral. And I'm not here to tell you of why we are so passionate and we believe so much about this project. It's because Fuerza laboral has been working on this for over 5 years. And we have acquired a tremendous amount of experience during that time, and we have acquired also another partners. For example, we are partnering with the City of Central Falls. We are partnering with the University of Rhode Island. We are partnering with Navigant and Credit Union, and so we are crossing sectors. So as you can see, we have the private sector, which is Navigant and Credit Union, and we have the nonprofit sector, which is Fuerza laboral, and that network is called a power network. It's people owning wider economic resources. I'm gonna quote Representative Williams, which is say that here in the state of Rhode Island, we are not productive. We are not productive. What is it? Proactive. That's what I meant. Yeah, we are not. we are not proactive. So this is a good way. This bill will actually ensure that we are being proactive. We are trying to create jobs, and the way we're trying to do is because one cooperative will actually finance the other one. So we are creating a co-op incubator. And we are pretty close to launching the first co-op, which is a cleaning, residential and industrial cleaning cooperative. Once that cooperative is up and running, they will reinvest in other cooperatives. And we will try to create other cooperatives such as catering, childcare, and many others. The possibilities are endless. And this is our way for us to support our community, for us to support our members, for us to give them an answer. Because a lot of our members, a lot of the people that we're working with have been taken advantage of by bad employers and have been exploited for so many years. So this is our responsibility. This is why we are working on this, where we believe it, and this is our way to respond to all these problems that are happening day in and day out. And so I encourage you to please pass this legislation, because it will be a benefit for our community. It will be a benefit for the entire state. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having us to speak. My name is Wyatt, and I'd like to talk about the fact that our economy, the Rhode Island economy, the nation's economy, suffers from gross inequality, and it has been a burden on the economy. This burden has led to a lack of jobs or employment that is temporary, marginal, and insecure. And this leaves workers being very unproductive or not as productive and creative as they can be. So we see every day how our economy is struggling, and despite the efforts of the business and political leadership, we've been unable to really move our economy forward. So this is one reason why I am in support of this bill. And one of the reasons is because one of the things is that Rhode Island workers, Rhode Island citizens, have been left out of the discussion of how we should grow and have a viable economy here in Rhode Island. So for this reason, I strongly support this bill. And I hope that it will give legal structure to worker co-ops. We've heard a lot about how worker co-ops are a good, but I think the two things that make them really the most important to me are they are rooted here in Rhode Island, and they are democratic. And I think that's really what makes them so unique and able to succeed, actually, is the fact that they are rooted in the community that they are part of, and they make democratic decisions that affect their community as well as their workplace.
Thank you. Mr. Choiniere?
Yes, hi. Thank you for everyone staying around what I think is a very important issue. This bill is really key, I think, to reviving and reestablishing Rhode Island as an economic powerhouse. We have a lot of very intelligent people in this state coming out of its universities and so on, and we want to know how to attract, new business, how to keep existing businesses in the state, so on and so forth. My background is actually in business and business consulting. I've worked in Silicon Valley, New York, in one of the largest recycling companies in the world. I like to look at the data. I'm sure some other folks like to look at that too. Well, in 2008, a study in Quebec showed that co-ops, that co-ops had a 5-year survival rate of 62% and a 10-year survival rate of 44%. That compared to 35% and 20% for conventional businesses. So that actually lines up with other numbers. This is actually growing data that's around for the support that basically worker co-ops do about twice as well as conventional business in survivability studies. Another thing that, just to talk about things that other people aren't talking about, the issue of conversions. So when we talk about Rhode Island, a big part of Rhode Island economy is small and medium-sized businesses with owners who are nearing retirement without people in their family or people to hand that business on to that are interested in continuing that business. Conversions can be an answer to this. We don't have to go that far. There's a very good example in Massachusetts. It's called the Yard and a Half Landscaping Cooperative. Basically, exactly as I described, one of the nation's best landscaping companies. The owner was ready to retire. She was worried about what was going to happen to her workers. They came together and they were able to sell the company to the workers, right? So the workers were able to take out loans to buy that company from the owner, right? So the owner got paid for all the hard work that they did in founding and establishing that company. This business has been worker-owned and democratically controlled since 2013. They've never lost money. And this is a landscaping business. This is not, it's a simple business, but not an easy business. It's easy to lose money in that business. When we talk about workers being up to the task and so on, they prove time and time again that they are able to be up to the task, to be able to respond to customer needs, and to be able to provide for themselves. I'd like to talk about one more thing, which is why this bill is needed. Other people have talked about some of the legal the extension of corporation law so that people don't have to incorporate in other states, yet they operate in Rhode Island. That's a good enough reason for me. I'll add another one. Other businesses who may be looking to, conventional businesses who are looking to get around worker protection, taxes and fees, for example, can attempt to classify their employees as members as if it was a cooperative, but it isn't a cooperative. They're just trying to get out of paying fees, right? So the point that I'm trying to make here is unless the state actually defines what a workers' cooperative is, anyone can come along and try to define it elsewise and then try to use that to get out of, basically, let's say, all of these people are owners. I don't have to pay, workers' compensation, insurance for them or something like that. That's not, this bill would provide all of the protections of workers, but all the benefits of being an owner in the direction of the company, right? So I come back to that same thing. Unless we define what a workers' cooperative is, unscrupulous types might try to define it in their own way. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Let's go to Daniel Norman, Ash Truel, Craig O'Connor, Randall Rose, and Doug Hall. Would anyone else like to speak on 6155? Come up to the table now. Give it to the clerk, please. Okay, go right ahead.
Hello. Thank you so much for having this hearing. I am a graduate student at Brown right now, and the reason I'm here to speak about this bill is because in the years I've lived here in Rhode Island, I've really fallen in love with the state. However, I must admit I have a very substantial fear about the long-term economic future of the state of Rhode Island. The fact of the matter is we are a very small state right between Boston and New York City, which are massive economic centers of gravity, which are siphoning off capital and young talent away from the state of Rhode Island. All of my friends, every single one of them who went to university here with the ever so valuable STEM degrees, is on the first bus to Boston or New York the moment after graduation. We live in an ever more mobile, fluid world where businesses have unprecedented capacity to uproot and resettle elsewhere. We already have lower cost of doing business, lower cost of living, lower property costs here in Rhode Island, and that is not stemming the flow, the siphoning of capital and talent and skill sets out of the state to the larger economic centers of gravity. What we need for a small state like Rhode Island, situated where we are, to not go the way of, I fear, sort of the American Rust Belt, is a systematic strategy to anchor jobs right here in the state. The cooperative model is that strategy. A cooperative is a business where the owners are the workers and the workers are the residents. And I'm not saying this is a magic bullet solution. This is a very complicated issue, several complicated issues of economics I've touched upon. However, I do not see any other form of business structure that can guarantee you that it is not going to uproot itself the way a cooperative can guarantee you it is going to stay in the community. And even if it did leave under some miraculous circumstance where all the workers of the cooperative decided together to uproot the business, well, now we don't have a number of unemployed people that are now a burden on the state. The cooperative accounts for various social concerns that currently the state is burdened with, but in the context of being a private business, because the interests of the workers are reflected in the cooperative business itself. So that's what I would like to say, and I am in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, is it?
Yes. So my name is Douglas Hall.
If you would not repeat any of the testimony, and actually, I think we're more interested in the nuts and bolts of it than the social aspect.
Yeah, well, I'm going to speak to the issues that we're quite concerned about at the Economic Progress Institute, some of which have been mentioned, and I will skim over those. But there's certainly some that will be new ideas for you to wrap your heads around. Certainly the fact that this economic model shifts towards a more democratic distribution of wealth, that will address the inequality issue that we've heard about, and that is a real problem here in Rhode Island. A recent study from the Center on Budget notes that we're in the top 20 for states in terms of the distribution, the ratio between those at the very top and those at the very bottom. I think that distribution of wealth is important. In empowering workers, we're addressing one of the other economic challenges that Rhode Island has been facing, along with other states, which is the decline of organized labor. In 1991, we had 21% of workers in Rhode Island covered by collective bargaining. Now we're down to a little over 12%. And so to move to an economic model, which this is, which empowers workers, that's a good complement to the existence and the continuing influence of labor here in Rhode Island. The third thing is that it's a very good wealth building model, and this is important in general, but it's even more important in communities of color, which we know.
Mr. Hall, I'm going to ask that you don't repeat the testimony that's already been given. We got several bills left on the calendar tonight.
Well, I don't think I've heard about the impact on communities of color per se, but it's also important that because it's inherently local, it transforms the local economy. So yes, it's good for the Rhode Island economy, but when you think about certain pockets that are struggling economically, some of our inner cities, et cetera, this is a model of economic organization that can be very transformative for those
Thank you.
communities as well.
I'm going to go to questions. Anyone have any questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know it's been a long night.
Thank you.
That'll conclude the hearing on 6155. Next, we'll go